Joining us on Republic Digital, we have with us a very special guest. She was a judge in the Supreme Court of India. When she came to the Supreme Court, there were 3 women judges for the very first time in the history of the Supreme Court. She was the 8th woman judge in the Supreme Court. She began her career actually as a judge from the Calcutta High Court. She was 44 years old, the youngest woman judge to be appointed in Calcutta. After a brief stint as the senior most judge in the Delhi High Court, she then moved to be the Chief Justice of the Madras High Court. I welcome on our show today former Supreme Court Judge, Justice Indira Banerjee. Justice Banerjee has been here in this personal and not so personal conversation. I actually want to start off first by asking you about your growing up years. You were 3 daughters, 3 siblings.
Yes, we were 3 sisters.
Give us, how were those times? What were the things you used to do? How did you start becoming a lawyer? What interested you?
You've asked me a lot of questions at the same time. Well, my eldest sister was about 10 years older than me. And my second sister, she was about 5 years older than me. They treated me like a kid initially, but as we grew up, we became friends. My sister was immensely fond of me. Unfortunately, I lost her about 2 years ago. She had cancer. How I became a lawyer, it was a chance coincidence. You know, my mother wanted me to be a doctor because her father was a doctor. But I used to run away from the biology classes when it came to dissecting frogs. That was something I just couldn't do. I opted for humanities at Loreto House, Calcutta. And later, I joined Presidency College. My mother always encouraged me to have a career of my own. And if I couldn't get into medicine because I didn't study science, she wanted me to take the civil services examination. You know, my father was in the Indian Police Service. Other members of the family were also in service. My father's side of the family, I had one aunt. Her family, her husband, son, daughter-in-law, daughter, son-in-law, they were all academicians. I was the odd one out who joined law. Now, as I was telling you, I took up history in Presidency College, honors in history, because I was advised that that would be a good subject for the competitive examination, the civil services examination. And I was planning to take up history and political science as my optional subjects. Then I was invited to a wedding. It was the wedding of a family friend's son, who was one of the toppers in the competitive examination. And he had opted for the Indian Foreign Service. Okay. He advised me to take up law as a subject because he felt that it was easier to score marks in law. Now, he was from the Delhi law faculty, which always had a standard. But unfortunately, I studied law at a time when these national law schools had not been established. Yes. You didn't have so many private institutions. And I'd rather not speak about the state of law education at that time.
True, ma'am.
It was even commented upon in Law Commission reports.
Okay.
Those who graduated from the universities in law, many of them did well. There were great judges, lawyers, jurists, but it was more because of their own ability, their own effort, rather than what they were taught at the law college. And most of the law courses in those days were part-time law courses.
Yes, yes.
Now, on the advice of this family friend of ours, I discontinued with masters. I was doing masters in international relations at the Jadavpur University because it was not possible to do masters and law together. That had been discontinued. And I took admission in the admission in law in the Calcutta University College of Law, the Hazra Road branch. And I took admission in the day session, and I must confess, it was a big cultural shock for me.
Why is that happening?
Because I was educated at Loreto House, and for a few years in Sophia High School in Mount Abu. When my father was posted there, came back, I did my senior. It was not senior Cambridge examination any longer. It was the All India school examination, class 11 examination, conducted by the Cambridge Local Examination Syndicate. Then I was at Presidency College where the standard was high.
I understand what you're talking about at that time and law colleges. I also want to ask you about your...
A classmate of mine asked me, what's your name? I told her my name. Then she said, which college are you from? So I said, Presidency College. The next question she put to me was, you didn't get honors? So I was a little taken aback. I was wondering whether I looked so foolish that she should put a question like this to me, whether I had got honors or not. So I actually fumbled. And I said, yes, I did. The next question was, then you could have done your masters. So I said, yes, I was doing my masters. You know, generally, people who didn't get admission anywhere else, people who wanted to while away their time, such students would do law. You only had a handful of second generation prospective second generation lawyers who opted to study law.
I want to ask you about the time you were born. I heard about your eldest sister. She was 10 years older. She was commenting on how cute you were. What did your family speak on it? Some distant relatives? From then onwards, only this question of women comes into the being and how women are treated in India.
You know, I was the third daughter. My sister was 10 years old, and she was very excited that she had a baby sister. So she said, oh, mummy, my sister is so fair and she has pink lips. She won't have to buy lipstick when she grows up. So my mother was in splits laughing. A distant relative who happened to be present there remarked, Bunny, don't laugh. Third daughter, save 50,000 rupees in the bank for each daughter and then smile. A comment made by a relative at the time when I was born.
My God. I mean, I feel this is the story of each house, where today we talk about women not being marginalized, ma'am. But what has your experience been through your times?
I'll tell you, as I grew up, you know, there would be people asking my parents, how many children do you have? 3 daughters. Oh, 3 daughters, no son. Even when I was 9 and my elder sister was about 19, almost marriageable age in those days, there would be people telling my parents, never mind, next time you'll get a son. And my mother would jump and say, no, 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 I don't want any more children. I'm quite happy with my 3 daughters. But so far as my parents are concerned, they gave us good education. I don't think any of us were discriminated because we were daughters.
That's very obvious, ma'am. You were a judge in the Supreme Court. You had many firsts when it came to even in the Calcutta High Court, also being the youngest woman permanent judge in the Calcutta High Court. How has the experience as a woman lawyer been for you?
At the time when I joined the profession, I don't think the atmosphere was very woman-friendly. And there were very few women in the profession. I was also a first generation. By the time I joined the profession, my father had retired about 10 years. The pay commissions had not come in then. So financially also, things were a little hard. The first major hurdle was to find a senior who would be willing to mentor a junior. And I was refused by at least 4 seniors who had been spoken to on my behalf. They may not have spoken to me directly, who said, sorry, we don't take women in the chamber. We don't take ladies in the chamber. There were others who said that the chamber is too crowded. Some of them said, look, I'm myself junior in the profession. How will I take a junior in the profession? So, as a matter of fact, I was getting quite frustrated. And then there was this very close friend of mine, Anushila. She belonged to a family of distinguished lawyers, but she chose not to practice, though she had done her law. Okay. She had also graduated from Presidency College with honors in history. Incidentally, the daughter of the former speaker, Mr. Somnath Chatterjee, who was a doyen of the Calcutta Bar, she had come to the Calcutta High Court. She bumped into my senior who asked her whether she had come to the court to practice. And she complained that she was not being encouraged to practice by the family. They had their own reasons. My senior, incidentally, my senior was Mr. S. Pal. Incidentally, again, the better half of my predecessor in office, Justice Ruma Pal.
Oh, right.
He also wrote a number of books. Books on contempt of court, Constitution of India. He was a leading constitutional lawyer. Leading constitutional lawyer of Calcutta High Court. So he told Anushila, do you want to practice? You leave things to me. Okay. I'll convince your brother and your father. To which her reply was, you're asking me, but those who come here to practice don't even get a senior. So Mr. Pal said, that surely can't be your problem. So she said, No, it's not my problem, but it's problem being faced by my friend. And then she mentioned my academic background, the marks I had got. Then Mr. Pal remarked that I'm sure your friend is not serious.
Ma'am, you were in Kolkata. Do you miss those days? Do you miss Kolkata? What are your likes about Kolkata? And of course, we really want to know what food, etc. do you like?
I've been I've been born and brought up in Kolkata, except for a brief period of about 4 years when I was in Mount Abu in Rajasthan. That was when my father was posted as the deputy director of the National Police Academy. The National Police Academy was then in Mount Abu. It's now in Hyderabad. I miss my school friends. There are school friends there. But I have a niece staying in Calcutta. 3 of my nieces are staying out of India. 2 of them in Singapore and 1 in Texas. So I do often go to Calcutta. I go about 3 or 4 times a month, almost every week. So I get to interact with them, meet them.
We asked you a little earlier about your digital, about India's digital growth and what you remember of the 1990s. What were the first computers you looked at?
The first computer I remember, the first one was a small desktop computer with a dot matrix printer, which took hours to print. But later, I had an HCL Pentium 2. And in those days, we couldn't use the internet much because you had to get onto the internet through your landline, which would remain engaged. It also used to be difficult to get the BSNL number. It used to be very busy. So what we generally did was, we used the computer for drafting pleadings, written notes of arguments, etc.
Yes.
And then we would save it in a floppy and send it to the solicitor. And sometimes we would just, if the pleadings were urgent or if the opinion was urgent, then we would just email it to the
I also want
solicitor.
Justice Banerjee get a sense of you in the Supreme Court. You mentioned in the High Court how you barged into one of the rooms so that you became friendly with the other judges on the benches. How was the experience in the Supreme Court? You were, of course, 3 women there together in the Supreme Court.
Yes, I often used to go to Indu's chamber. Justice Indu Malhotra is she became a very good friend. She still is. Immensely fond of her. Justice Bhanumati too. She was a wonderful lady and a good judge. I knew both of them from before. But that apart, I knew many of the judges who were there in the Supreme Court from before.
Justice Banerjee, some of your key cases which you think struck a chord with you in any court, whether it was in Delhi, Madras, Calcutta, or of course the Supreme Court.
As a lawyer, I didn't handle criminal cases. But a few years after I became a judge, I was made the presiding judge of a bench taking up criminal appeals. And one of the earlier appeals which I had decided has left an imprint. It still sends, I still get goose pimples when I think of this case. It was a case where a family had gone for an outing along with friends. And one of the persons got drowned. The wife, friend's wife, friend's brother-in-law, that is wife's brother, a third friend, and a friend's friend who had come for a holiday for a few days were all arrested. They were charged with murder on the basis of the post-mortem report, which at the end of the day is only an opinion. I acquitted all the accused persons. But when the incident took place, the daughter of one of the couples present there was about 7 or 8 years of age. And when I decided the appeal and acquitted all the accused, this child was no longer a child, she was 22 years old. So I've always felt terrible. Who returns this child her lost childhood? She spent all her growing up years with her two parents incarcerated as life convicts on the charge of having committed murder. And the conviction was based on the post-mortem report and also by applying the last seen together theory, which is only a circumstantial evidence. And in the case of circumstantial evidence, it is a rule that the chain of circumstance, there should be an unbroken link in the chain of circumstances, which should lead to no other conclusion than conclusion of the guilt of the accused. I thought, I felt awful, I can just say that.
Was it beyond reasonable doubt?
It was, the charge had definitely not been proved beyond reasonable doubt, in my opinion. And ultimately, when I pronounced the judgment, the public prosecutor who was appearing on behalf of the state said, "We are not going to appeal. You have delivered a right judgment." Apart from that, there were important cases. I had to decide the vires of the West Bengal Entry Tax Act, and I had struck it down as ultra vires the Constitution on the ground that presidential assent had not been obtained. I was quite on tenterhooks as to what comments would be made, because earlier comments were made against a judge. But fortunately for me, the only remark which was made from the authorities was the remark that we'll file an appeal, which is perfectly legitimate. She has decided in accordance with her understanding of the law, we'll file an appeal. I used to decide as per my understanding of the law applied to the facts of the case. I may have been wrong, I may have been right. Now, this case with regard to the Entry Tax Act, I was personally of the view that a 1% entry tax should not be hit by Article 304B of the Constitution of India. But I was bound by the Constitution bench judgment in the Atiyabari case of the 1960s. So I was bound to follow Atiyabari as a single bench. I couldn't hold otherwise. I wrote down the views as arguments made on behalf of the respondents. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm bound. I can't hold otherwise. Later, Atiyabari was reversed by a larger bench of the Supreme Court. Many judges fear the consequences, adverse consequences which may follow if bail is granted. But bail is also granted by the lower courts. It's not as if they don't. Look, there are certain principles for grant of bail. Bail is a rule, jail is an exception. But then, if the accused is a threat, if allowed to roam, if he's a threat to the complainant or to society at large, then you don't grant bail. If the offence alleged is of a very serious nature, then depending on the materials which are already available, then bail is not granted. Definitely we encourage access to justice. The courts nowadays encourage access to justice. When the Constitution was amended and Article 39A introduced, it was to bring equal justice to the people. The Legal Services Authorities Act was enacted. Now, a certain class of litigants, particularly those with income below a certain level, are provided free legal assistance. There are legal awareness camps where the ordinary people are made aware of the law and also the remedies which are available to them so that they can approach the court. And then, of course, with the development of technology and more news channels, instant reporting, nowadays, sitting in any corner of the world, you can see what is going on in a courtroom in the Supreme Court. When everything came to a standstill during the COVID pandemic, within a few days of the pandemic, the Supreme Court started functioning and other high courts also started functioning. This was possible because of technology. So the courts have to upgrade technology, and judges also have to keep abreast with technological developments which take place.